Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us during this extremely busy holiday season. I'm Kim Coots. I'm a research analyst from MiraCosta College. I'm joined by my compatriots, Sam Homeyer and Lisa Trescott. And again, welcome to our December meeting of our California Community College TUG meeting. We are recording this session, so bear that in mind. We've got a fully packed agenda today. Does anybody have any announcements before we get started with everything else? Okay, hearing none, put it in the chat if you think of something a little bit later. We have an amazing guest that is joining us today to talk about your dashboards in terms of design. Lindsay Betzendahl has joined us today, so we are super excited. We have a Tableau showcase from Patsy Garcia, who's going to talk a little bit about guided pathways and what she has designed for her institution. And then we're going to have an office hours session where Lisa Trescott is going to talk about how to use pop-out filters in your dashboards to be able to create a clean design so that you can add functionality without adding a lot of busyness to your dashboard pages. And we'll wrap things up and let you know that our next meeting is Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2024, believe it or not. There's a lot going on in the Tableau community with different challenges and activities. And one of the things that was released recently by Tableau is the Tableau Data Plus Movies Challenge. IMDb, or the Internet Movie Database, is available with a giant, and I do mean giant, data set of information about movies since the beginning of movies. And it is a magical data set to play with and practice your dashboarding skills. Both Lisa and I have built dashboards related to this data set. And really the challenge was not what could we build, but what couldn't we build, because there are so many different ideas and ways to go about it. And there's a quick promo that Salesforce has created, and we will play that now.
Get ready. Relax, guys. It's just Tableau's Data Plus Movies Challenge. Enter the Data Plus Movies Challenge today. Create and share a viz that tells the story of the data behind the movies we love and get a free t-shirt.
So yes, a t-shirt as well. So if you haven't investigated this at all, I highly recommend it. It's a great way to have some fun, to practice and improve your Tableau skills on something that's a world that's different probably from your daily working world. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sam Homeyer, who's going to introduce Lindsay.
Okay, hi everyone. Like Kim said earlier, we are super excited to have Lindsay Betzendahl with us today. Lindsay is a partner and senior consultant at Health Data Viz, and she's the co-author of the book Visualizing Health and Healthcare Data. She's a 4-time Tableau visionary, 5-time Tableau public ambassador, co-leads the virtual healthcare Tableau user group. She's a 3-time Vizzy Award recipient and has 14 Viz of the Days, including 3 that she designed and built for her clients. Lindsay is passionate about putting users first through the careful design and development of custom dashboards that are both functional and beautiful. And she's here today to talk to us about best practices with regards to designs of our dashboards. So thank you so much for joining us today, Lindsay.
Well, thanks. Glad to be here. All right. And set. Maybe. There we go. All good? Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for being having me here. Hopefully I can get through this. So I'll keep me honest with time. All right. So I'm going to talk about thinking with design in mind as you work towards your dashboards. And while I can't see you all, and therefore I can't really ask questions or have you raise your hand, just enlighten me. So question, how many of you have heard of the term design thinking? So you can certainly drop it in the chat. I'm just curious if people have said it. Oh, cool. Yeah, hands up also. I think sometimes we forget about that designing a well-developed, well-designed dashboard does take a lot of work, and a lot of designers are using design thinking. So I'm going to kind of go through some of that. But simply put, it's a process. So one of my favorites, you ever developed a dashboard that did not get the use you expected? You built something you thought was great, you took the business requirements, you used the skills you had, and you delivered something. And then people ask, can I just get this in a table? Or don't use it as you would expect. One of the things is that good design and good dashboard design does take a lot of work. And it's really easy to design things for ourselves. We know what we like, we know how we interpret data, we know how we intend to use something. It's a lot harder to design a dashboard or visualization for somebody else, right? So there's a lot of work that goes into UX design, discovery, persona development, understanding your users, and then adding all those best practices to achieve a great visual. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll begin to start to think like a designer and have some tools in your tool belt to improve your current designs. So I'm not going to go over all this. Obviously, thank you, Samantha, for that introduction. I have been using Tableau for almost 10 years now, and that sort of seems scary at this point that I've been doing this for this long, but that is because I love it this much, or so much, and developing dashboards for clients and being very creative with not only the tool, but just being able to communicate data in a visual way, it just brings me a whole lot of joy. So I do it every day, and I love that. So I'm really happy to be able to share some of these tips and tricks with you all. So let's just start by looking at this example dashboard that was provided for me. It was redacted, which is why you see all the X marks, but this is a real dashboard. So just imagine, just think, what are your initial thoughts or reactions, maybe even what this dashboard is trying to solve, maybe who is it designed for, how would you use it, right? These are the types of questions you would want to ask about a dashboard and thinking about how you might redesign it. There might be some things that work well. There might be some other things that throw you off or you don't like as much. So, but how do you get from this design that could use a little bit of improvement to another design? And what were the design choices that improve that design? So it's one thing to say, oh, this one looks better than this one, or I like this piece and that. But what is the why behind that? And what are the elements that make a dashboard well designed, or the concepts that a designer used in order to actually achieve it? Now, what I'll say here as a caveat is that full design and good design does include a number of other processes, including, like I said earlier, kind of discovery, persona development, design, iteration, development, user testing, addressing feedback, QA, and documentation. I don't have enough time to go through all of those, so I will be focusing more on the design part of that whole process, but know that there are a bunch of other pieces to achieving a good design. So I'm going to tell a quick little story. So we tend to know when a design is good, right? So if nobody questions when, I don't know, you turn on your faucet and it works just like you expected. You don't question it. You don't question who thought of the design or why it was designed that way. It just works, right? I went to a hotel not too long ago where I had to present at a conference, and I get into the elevator with the key cards. I don't know who invented these things. It's just so much easier to just push a button, but they want to limit you if you go above the 10th floor for some reason. I was nobody special, but I was on the 10th floor. Get my key card and I go in, and as I expected, not the first time I used a key card to get into an elevator, there is a the little circle thing pretty much close to at my head height, and I'm putting my key card up to it as I expect to be able to do. Well, nothing happens. Can't press the button. I try a bunch of different things. Hold both of them, the key and the button at the same time. key then button, button then key, like nothing. Get out of the elevator with my bags and try to flag someone down to say, I can't get my key card to work. Eventually someone comes over and lo and behold, it comes into the elevator. He holds the key card down at a lower spot that looks very similar to whatever I was holding it over, but it was not the right space where it was going to unlock the elevator for me. What I came to realize, aside from the fact that this little circle that I was supposed to use was by my knees, is that the design was poor. To me, in my opinion, I was like, this is horribly designed. Why is this not at my eyesight level? So when we see designs or run into problems with how a design functions, we're more apt to say, this is what I would improve. This is why it didn't work. When things work well, we don't think about them. And the reason that is that good design takes a lot of time. And for even thinking about dashboards, creating that well-designed dashboard is more than just what meets the eye. There is obviously the obvious part that we see, but designers take into a lot of consideration of all these other aspects in order to achieve a visualization that people just love to use. It works well, and nobody kind of questions what went into it. So there's obviously what we see, and what we want to have is that this top of the iceberg, what someone sees is all that they just use it, right? They're not going to question everything else. But there's a big process that goes into that. So this is a presentation all of its own. And so we're going to focus a bit on that surface, that visual design. But again, know that there's pieces to working on a dashboard that go into the structure of it, which I will touch on that in terms of organization and the framing of it, the layout, and where you place things. There's also user flow to consider. How does someone navigate? What happens when I click on something? How do I get from one dashboard to the other? And what is the guided analytics framework that gets me there? What is the scope of the dashboard, which means who is it built for? Who's going to use it? And the way I would design a dashboard, say for public consumption, maybe on a public website, may be different for an internal user or an executive of a business. They would look very different. They have a different person who's going to use them. And then the last deepest part is strategy, which is doing all the research on those personas so you can build the whole thing all the way up. So talking about that visual design part of things, this tends to be the easier thing to kind of get a handle on. And the topic that people try to achieve first is understanding the important aspects of good visual design. But once you do master this, don't forget there's a whole rest of this iceberg that goes into good design. So we do spend a lot of time in this top portion. But again, don't forget, we don't want to overlook all these other pieces. Like, you can't get to them all today. But so it's a common mistake to think that charts are just a fancy way of showing numbers. They're not. We want to make sure that these are tools for understanding and that we're accurately showing the data and using the best chart types and colors and organization so that this is very easy for a user, that people can quickly understand it. We don't want them to work too hard. Otherwise, the visualization is not doing its job at communicating the data. Now, an old boss once called me a unicorn, which I loved because it was so sweet of her. But good designers aren't unicorns. As I alluded to at the beginning, it's really just we have the help of guidelines called the design thinking process, which help direct our thinking in terms of how we create and design something. And this really helps to ensure that all these layers work together as we think through the design thinking process. Now, I wasn't always called a unicorn because at one point in my life I was called, well, I wasn't called, but I was more of this Lego turtle. And the short story is that when I was a kid, I had this project I had to do when I was in elementary school. Maybe I was in, I don't know, I was probably 8 or 9. And we had to create an animal out of, things are household objects, right? Things around your house, and build it and give it its home and bring it into school. Well, I'm not exactly sure why I picked Legos. While I love them now, I don't recall loving them then. But it was probably, I would imagine, probably the night before. And I thought of what would be an animal I'd build. I don't know why I thought of turtle. I think I had one as a kid at the same time. I was like, yeah, I'll build my turtle. What's best to make turtles? Well, they're hard. So I was like, might as well find something that's hard. And I picked these Legos. I didn't think through really the process at all of how I was going to achieve what looked like a good turtle. I certainly didn't sketch anything out. I ended up putting these pieces together sort of haphazardly with this resulting very crummy turtle. My mom says to me today that it almost broke her heart to let me go to school with this terribly designed animal. In retrospect, what happened was it became a joke in my family that if you ever did anything subpar or without really taking a lot of time and consideration to think about the end result, you were building a Lego turtle. And so that is now a family phrase of, oh, that's going to be a Lego turtle. And I don't want you to build Lego turtles, right? That is the biggest mistake you can make. And in order to avoid that, we do have to go through kind of a process of understanding how do you get from A to B to get to a good design. And it's certainly not just picking up the Legos and putting the blocks together. So even with dashboards, it's not just putting these blocks together, it's thinking through this entire process. So today, I'm going to dive a little deeper into the beginning portion of the design thinking process and talking about inspiration, prototyping, and design specifically. And I'm being a dead horse here, but this is a process. And so as you get better at design, there's a hurdle of, this is gonna be super exciting, I'm gonna be able to do this. And then you come to realize there's a lot of things maybe you don't know about how to do design. How does someone get very good at picking colors? How did you know, that was the best chart type? Or how do you figure out how to fit all these things together, right? You start understanding some of the challenges that happen. And maybe you'll feel defeated, maybe you won't, but you'll get there, right? The more we practice and learn these things, then the joy will come out of that, and you'll be creating fantastic dashboards and designs. So my first tip in thinking about inspiration is going through the process of generating ideas. I always start with kind of these mood boards when I have a client or even a personal project of, let me just kind of scour the world for ideas. Something's going to catch your eye that may give you inspiration that you hadn't even thought of before. It's often good to get outside inspiration. It doesn't have to be about data viz. You can look in books or on the web. I've heard other people even going for a walk and just trying to see if something is going to spark you. But creativity comes from the constraints that perhaps are put upon us to do a dashboard, and having those constraints pushes us to kind of look for new ideas and be innovative. So you can do things like searching a topic on Google. You can look on places like Dribbble or Tableau Public, Behance, Instagram, search a hashtag, anything. I encourage all the consultants that I work with to go through this process. And I've told them a bazillion times, it's amazing to see what they come up with when they look around and they identify what gave them some creative idea. Again, it doesn't have to be the dashboard that you're looking for, but it could be something about layout and organization. Never thought to put, my filters over here, or what have you. Colors and style, charts and visual techniques. That's a really interesting chart. Never thought about it. I think I'm going to, hold that for some other time. I'm going to use it, right? I try to grab ideas. Even navigation and icons, you can just see how you interact with things on the web and snatch some ideas for how you build in Tableau and even typography. So it could be anything that you pull from different pieces. So I tend to collect all these on a page as I'm preparing to do my actual design for a dashboard. So using this inspiration can come in a number, like I just said, a number of forms, and here are some examples. the first one on the left, I don't know if you can see my mouse. Oh, you can. Can you? Maybe. You'll see here, this was on the web. It had really nothing to do with what I was working on, I don't think. But there were these little places, opaque, rectangles for big numbers. And this particular client, I had to kind of do this. I'm like, I really like that idea. So I used it in the design. This is a personal one. And I was like, these are super bright colors. I would never do this ever. But I was like, this time I want to try it. Let's just see if I can make a visualization that uses these crazy colors that I saw, because for some reason it felt appropriate for the topic on kindergarten. This one had this, I don't know, little artsy web thing, and I had to do a visualization, an infographic actually on sickle cell research. And I was like, I think I can use the same kind of concept as my image. So I created that. Right. So all these things, and this was a topography one that I was curious about. So I take inspiration from all these different places. I mean, shoot, one was an ad on sneakers. It was not certainly something I was looking for. To push myself to do things I wouldn't have perhaps otherwise thought about. Here's a couple of this inspiration from a PowerPoint deck. I liked the colors. I liked the minimalism of it. Inspiration on just icons used in someone's public viz. Here's a layout design. I had to do a mobile viz, and here was my prototype, and then the actual build does look like very similar. So design or ideas can come from anywhere. So I encourage you to do that first before you get into the design. The next step in my design process is prototyping. If you don't prototype, I can't stress enough how amazing it is. It's definitely getting a lot of traction these days. I think more people are doing it. I wasn't doing it probably 3 years ago. So there was probably a good 7 years ago. I was just diving right into Tableau. But you'll see here. So in this process of trying to think through how to rebuild and redesign this particular visualization, I prototyped it out first. I had to mess around with kind of the organization and the layout and take apart the original dashboard and then re-put it together using some best practices. And that's much easier to do without real data and in a prototyping tool. So prototyping is just trying your best to create this complete user experience without having to do the whole Tableau build or any dashboard build. And it's best not to use data, and it makes it actually much easier. So you can create really low fidelity concepts, even some sketching. Some people are very good at that. I tend to struggle with sketching. But no matter which method you take, even if it's putting some things into Excel to kind of frame out something's going to go here, something's going to go here, we're going to have this metric and that metric, it does help you obtain earlier feedback from users. People say, do I have this right? Do I have all the pieces that I'm going to need to have here? And bounce those off of somebody before you get into an actual build. And to be honest, in my experience, it really helps with clients getting a really good sense of the direction you're heading. Some people don't have as much of an imagination when you say, and I'm going to, make these bar charts, and this is going to be a % of total, and I'll have this over here, and they can't imagine it. So it really helps them get on board and provide feedback early and often. So you definitely should prototype without any data. I think it helps focus you and clients or users on the actual design that you're thinking through. Sometimes people can get very focused on the numbers. Like that number would never actually exist, and you're like, it's not even real anyway. So without data is even better. You can get a lot more precise here without the tech having a tool, which can be more complicated to achieve the designs that you want quickly enough, right? I can build a lot faster in something like Figma than I can in Tableau. You can test visual concepts. I can iterate a bunch and try something that I think might work, and then really see if it's gonna work or if I should just scrap it. I better scrap it now before I actually build it in Tableau. And you can preemptively implement best practices. And what I mean by that is, we all know Tableau, and sometimes there are things Tableau does that we wish it didn't do. Like, I don't want all these grid lines, or I wouldn't have chosen these colors. And right, so when you are designing, you are purposely putting in the best practices that you know versus having to take them away in Tableau or any other tool. So I think it really helps you focus on those best practices. And lastly, it helps you check against the personas that you are designing towards. So you can build it and say, is this really going to be right for a CEO? I think I put too much on this page. Or is this really right for this, manager at this level? And you can sketch from this low fidelity and slowly move your way up to higher fidelity as you go through this process of iterating and getting feedback and testing out your ideas and, trying out your inspirations. And again, so the continual iteration is really important as well. I think never is the first design the final one, although sometimes it may have a lot of the bones here. And this is a real example from Health Data Viz, where I work. First one had a lot of good bones. We had some questions. We moved stuff around. We did iterate, and the final one is on the right. But we always want to improve upon our initial concepts, right? And so perfection, it's one of my favorite quotes, is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. And this can be hard with designers or us in visualization, where we love all this visual stuff. We love all the data. We love all the colors, right? And sometimes it's hard to take things away that you created and think it's perfect. But if we try really hard and we challenge ourselves sometimes to take away and see if everything still stands and is everything still as it should be, that can be really powerful as we learn to be better designers. This might be hard to see. I know these are kind of very small screenshots, but as you're designing, you can get what I call hallway feedback. So if I had gone with my initial design here on the left, I'm so glad I didn't. I was trying out all these fun things that were like totally over the top and unnecessary. But hallway feedback is just checking this against someone quickly, whether it's a colleague or it could be a user, it could be, your partner, your husband, wife, your child. What do you think of this? What do you like? What do you don't like? Right? Just getting some quick feedback to see if with anything you're missing, anything you're off track on, anything that looks really terrible to somebody else. You can also conduct formal user testing, where you actually put it in front of the end user and have them run through kind of scenarios that you can script out for them. And then either way, you can adjust designs as needed. But one of the biggest takeaways is that it's not your baby, which means it's sometimes very hard to take feedback on something you've worked very hard on and a lot of hours on potentially. But recognizing that whatever you're building often, unless I guess it's your own personal work, is not your baby, meaning you are designing and developing something often for somebody else. If you're working as a consultant or in an organization, and that you have to learn to be okay with that criticism and take it as positive feedback to improving your designs. Again, an example of getting to a better design at the end and stripping away a lot of all the unnecessary stuff. It ended up being a much cleaner and more effective design, obviously. So now we've gone through prototyping. The next part of the design phase is the design, the pieces that you would put together. And so there's a huge importance of design in the sense of when we don't have that, when we haven't thought about why something works well and how best to implement certain design practices, you can look here and say, do you want to go into this store it's kind of like haphazard, we're not really sure why things are different places, I don't know about the order of it, I might still be able to find what I want eventually, but if you imagine it like a dashboard, it becomes a little overwhelming, and this might be the one like in the meme in the beginning of nobody wants to use it, or one that's well organized, it's well thought out, well curated, pieces are in the right place, they're easy to understand, I know exactly where certain things are, and then it feels polished and enjoyable to use. So one of the first and easiest aspects of the design is just simple organization. And this is just the hierarchical layout of a dashboard. So we generally want to put the most important things at the top and the top left as we look in often a Z or F pattern from left to right and top down. And so either the highest, most aggregated information can be at the top, the most important, but you tend to want to follow this top-down approach. The other piece to organization is actually grouping objects and charts together into containers, or using things such as background shading, separation lines, margins, etc., to ensure that things that go together are obviously seen and grouped and interpreted together. So, for example, we have grids. You can have grid designs and organizations. You can, the bottom one, sort of small, are the most aggregated pieces of the dashboard are at top in a simple like tiled approach that makes it very obvious that these are the things I should probably look at first, and then below are the details that I can drill down and get more information on. And examples of separating different metrics together by grouping them with thin lines and containers. And this helps really keep, as I said, the kind of the image of the store. Things are organized. If I'm really interested in a particular metric, I should be able to find that easily and understand which pieces and which charts go all together that I should interpret as one. The next in design is white space. And I think people talk about this all the time now, perhaps. And so it may not be new, but it's certainly something that designers take a lot of time to think about. In fact, I was in a client meeting one day not too long ago where there was a chart, and then there was a bit of white space, and I think it was a line chart, and the data just was low. And she was like, I don't really like that there's all this space. Maybe we should, truncate the axis or something silly. And I was like, no, it's fine. Let the data be. It's okay. There's white space. White space is good. Like some people are very averse to it because they're not used to. They want to just fill it, right? But white space really does create that clean and polished look. It helps with readability, helps people focus their attention on the important parts of it. And so you really do want to try to create an uncluttered dashboard. I like to use a lot of inner and outer padding in the overall frame as well as within my charts themselves. Overall margins, right? Again, this is where like Tableau might give me only 4 pixels and then 8 pixels on my tile. And I like to bump up my overall to like 20 to 24, and spacing objects differently as well. And you can see how we can do that and adding this space and making sure that all the charts have enough room to breathe. Even when you have a lot of things, in one visual, we want to increase some of that space as much as we can. And sometimes that may mean increasing the dashboard size if it's possible so that you can achieve some of that white space. Next is color with intention. And I love this. I love color, and I like trying to see where can I actually sometimes take it away and where is it going to be most impactful. So I like to follow the 60-30-10 rule, which is 60% of your dashboard should be a primary color, 30% a secondary, and 10% can be an accent color. And really only using the color to highlight important aspects. And don't be afraid of gray. It's okay to use gray on things where you really don't need to have color. So for example, in this rebuild, in my design, I started to realize that there was a lot of color going on. There was a lot of the blue, there was orange, there was yellow, there was green. And like, I don't know that I needed all of that color. So when I'm thinking about redesigning this and thinking about color with intention, it was an important aspect of this particular one was this change over time, adds and terms, like how many people were adding, how many people were losing. So that is where I added the colors in this red and the blue. And the difference I kept in gray. And then on the other side, it's like I didn't need to have this chart colored. So I made it in gray and then used instead the little dots to indicate where something was above our target. And so instead of coloring everything, let's focus the attention on the most important pieces and strip everything else away if we can. Some examples of that are, again, only highlighting, using some gray, only highlighting the things that are most important, that are, look here right now, someone's gonna have to do something. And, using only a couple colors. You see all of these use like, there's three colors, maybe 4. and trying to avoid a lot of colors in one visualization. And it does end up being a cleaner, more polished look, I think, when people only have to identify what 3 different colors mean. All right, and next is chart choices. And this is a more tricky one in terms of design. But the point of this is, as you're thinking about developing a dashboard, designing one, you want to evaluate each of the charts that you're proposing, and ensuring that not only does it answer the right questions, but what kind of space does it take up, and how does it compete or not compete with the other things, the other elements that you might have on your dashboard. So we want to choose the right charts. And, as I said, some charts will naturally take up a little bit more space, but sometimes it challenges you to be more creative. If it's going to take up too much space and it's really not the main focus, how can you challenge yourself to think about a different way to show it? So, for example, in this rebuild that I was doing, there was a huge section at the top that had all of these numbers just kind of written out. And there was a lot of it, and it took up, I think, the whole top. As I was thinking through the redesign, I didn't think that everything needed, this wasn't the best chart choice to show, a current value and kind of the year-to-date progress. And instead, I could skinny down all of this to a different chart that actually showed that more accurately and more clearly. And on the bottom, there was another one that had, again, was more like a table, and then there was this year-over-year change, and it, not only did it take up space, it wasn't very effective. So trying to think again, a little outside the box of how can I achieve kind of what they were going for, not take up more room per se, because I didn't really have a lot, but how do I drive insights a little faster, and trying to think about how can I collapse different pieces, and really getting those creative juices to think and challenge the chart types that we're using. Here's another example where the chart was this bar chart where we had the ads and the terms. And I found it very challenging, not that it wasn't right, it is showing the data correctly, but I found it challenging to get the insights I was looking for. Well, I can see when it's above or below. I can't really see by how much. The change gets lost, and it's just like visually was trickier to interpret. Plus there was some like text on the top that said the net change, and I was like, that's not really the value of the bar. I didn't like it. So I was like, well, how can I change this? Like, what would make what would solve my challenges in looking at this visualization, which is where I moved to this other type of chart, looking at showing both the ads and terms, and then that difference. Just another example of kind of thinking through the current chart choices and how would you redesign them. And in this particular example, this is one of my companies. The first one that I think was developed in 2013, so it was super old. And so we were updating it anyway because it was really bad. But as I was looking at it, thinking, there's a lot going into this calendar, and I get the purpose of it, and I understand that. But when do I need to look at all of these in such detail at one time? I didn't think I did. I thought I was losing value in this bottom right section, which had information on OR utilization, and it was just a table. So starting to think about the users and improving the charts, I had to, and not necessarily making it bigger, thinking about how can I make this calendar more useful. So skinning it down to the most important, 1 month at a time, with the others as context, and being able to kind of like swap through them. I thought I achieved the same need of the calendar, but a different chart approach. And then with the table, it was like, I know this is important information and it's getting lost. What would be another way to still maintain the table type, but provide more insights? And then adjusting that table, as you see on the right, to have a lot more data with some clear indications of where things are over and under, and where things are above a certain threshold, without adding too much visual competition. But again, improving, I think, the insights. So again, always kind of challenging yourself to think about the charts. What is their purpose, and what other types of visuals potentially could still achieve this purpose, in a more pleasing or more organized or less colorful or what have you way. Okay, So in review, it looks like I'm good on time. So it's perfect. Good design and thinking about design starts out with looking for inspiration and always utilizing that as a creative means to generate ideas. And don't be afraid to steal like an artist, because ultimately I think that always is going to improve your end creative skills. Sometimes I set out on a dashboard to literally steal like an artist because I'm like, I want to learn what that person did. And if I don't try to do my best at replicating the concept, I won't learn it, right? So that is often just the only reason I do it. Don't forget about prototyping. Again, even if it's just sketching out some quick ideas of where you might put things, as you think through kind of the concepts of, organizations and colors and charts, because it'll, again, allows you to utilize those best practices of design right away and making conscious decisions about what you would put into your design and into your dashboard. And iterate and getting feedback is a really good place to do it before you actually put so much time and effort into the actual build, because often, as my experience tells me, modifying things in Tableau can be a lot more trickier than either erasing something on a piece of paper or moving some things around in Figma. And lastly, again, for reiterating on design, organizing from top to bottom, from most aggregate to least, adding that white space, don't be afraid of it. If you don't know how to use containers, practice with containers, because they will become your best friend as it relates to adding padding and white space. And use color with intention. And if there's too much color, try to challenge yourself of where do you not necessarily need it and where you can limit it to this 60-30-10 rule. And lastly, evaluate and assess the effectiveness of your charts and the space that they ultimately take up in your view. And here you can see in the example that I started in the beginning, how I moved from evaluating the original build. I did get looking for inspiration, I don't have that here, and doing an actual prototype and then completing the actual redesign in Tableau with those concepts to show that what I designed can be achieved, which is always really important, why you want to think about your designs as it relates to if it's actually possible in your tool as well. But you'll see some of that white space I added, again, the intentional color, the chart choices, and that organization, and how I moved certain things around to make sure the most important things from that top left and flowing down to the least important in the bottom right. And that is it. So if you want to connect, at zendahl.data.com. I have a blog that at VizZenData as well. And yeah, you can reach me. And then I don't know if we have questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. That was absolutely amazing. And yes, I'm definitely going to be taking some of your tips because they are very helpful. So yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And then, so next we have Patsy Garcia, who's a research analyst at Bakersfield College. And so what she has done is she has assisted with various projects involving enrollment management, persistence, outreach, and graduation initiatives. And so what she has for us today is she will be showcasing a guided pathways momentum points dashboard. So thank you so much for being here, Patsy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I will also be implementing some of the tips I learned from Lindsay's presentation. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen now. So again, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to showcase one of our Bakersfield College Tableau dashboards. Today I'll be showcasing our Guided Pathways Momentum Points dashboard created by the OIE team at Bakersfield College. And this dashboard is available to view in our Tableau public profile. So it's available to the public, and it has been updated recently, but it will be having more updates in the coming weeks with additional data and additional changes to the visualizations. So some background information, sorry about that. Some background information on the dashboard. So the dashboard shows headcount information for first-time non-special admit students in the fall semester, and summer starters are included only if they also enrolled in that fall semester. And with this definition, current special admits are excluded, and former special admits are included. And I've also summarized the momentum points and success metrics that we can view in this dashboard. So units attempted contains information on units attempted in the first term, the first year, first 1.5 years, and then by the second year. Transfer level math and English completion is shown individually for English and math as well as combined. And then Golden 4 completion is the completion of oral communication, written communication, critical thinking, and transfer level math. And then we have fall to spring persistence, fall to fall persistence, and then finally degree completion, showing students who received any award within the given time period. And now if we take a look at our dashboard, okay, hopefully that's big enough for everyone to see. So this dashboard contains data on 9 fall cohorts from fall 2014 to fall 2022. And one nice feature of this dashboard is that it contains student-provided full ethnicity information that we retrieved from the CCC Apply application. So we can view it here. For example, if we select on Asian ethnicities, we can see the specific Asian ethnicities. And then we can also use our filter here if we wanted to drill down even more for specific groups. We have that, and I'll be clearing these out. And I'll be walking you through the former special admit students within these cohorts. So here we see an increase over time in the head counts of former special admit students who came to BC as first-time non-special admit students after high school. And then another nice feature is once you select filters on this first page or on any of the pages with success metrics related to success metrics, the filters will apply to all of the success metric tabs. That does not include the equity analysis tab, since that's a different database of aggregated data. But for the success metrics, that will apply. And then if we click on English and math for the first year, see the filters still set to Y for former special admit students. And then the first 2 charts that we see here, the first one shows math and English completion in the first by the first year, which includes enrollments as a special admit and post-secondary enrollments. And then the second chart shows completion of transfer level math in their first year. So this only looks at post-secondary enrollments for these students. And as we can see, when we look at their the former special admit students' entire enrollment history, we're seeing a higher rate of math and English completion, indicating that a lot of these students are completing transfer level English and math during their special admit years. And then if we go on to English, so same thing by the first year and in their first year. So I'll skip math. We can go now to units attempted. And here we see the 15 units being attempted in the first term, 30 units being attempted in the first year. And this is BC recommends 15 units or more in each primary semester so that students can graduate on time, even though financial aid does consider 12 units being full-time enrollment. 15 units will allow students to graduate on time. So that's why that is highly encouraged. And then we've expanded that now to include the attempting 45 units by 1.5 years. So that would be the fall, if the cohort was for fall 17, that would be all of the units accumulated from, if they were a summer starter, so of a summer starter, it would be summer 2017 all the way to fall 2018. And then here by the end of the second year, so that would be, again, for this cohort, if they started in the previous summer, it would be summer 2017 all the way to spring 2019. And then for the Golden 4 completion, for these, we look at Golden 4 completion by the first year and in the first year, because again, BC encourages our students to complete these Golden 4 requirements in their first year instead of by their second year, just to keep the momentum going. And then here again, for these former special admit students, we can see that we have a higher rate of completion for the Golden 4 when we look at all of their enrollments versus just their post-secondary enrollment. So again, those special admit students are completing those Golden 4 requirements during their special admit years.
Patsy, could you please define Golden 4 for us?
Yes. So Golden 4 is the completion of oral communication, written communication, critical thinking, and transfer level math. And then, see, that's a great question. So I think that's one learning lesson for me here is adding that information onto the dashboard just to avoid people having to leave the dashboard to go Google Golden 4. So that's definitely some more information I'll be adding to this dashboard here. And then we can track the persistence of these students as well. So this is fall to spring persistence and then fall to fall persistence. So we do see a high fall to spring persistence, and then fall to fall persistence is not quite as high for these former special admit students. And then for degree completion, we're looking at students who received any award by their second year, and then here it's any award by the third year. And now onto the equity analysis tabs. So as a reminder, now we're looking at the entire cohort again, just with rising scholars excluded, and the filters that were in the success metric tabs no longer apply, since this data was pre-aggregated in order to determine disproportionate impact for these groups. And then here's the information button showing the R package. So the R program, we use the R program and then a specific R package to calculate the PPG -1 and proportionality index method to determine disproportionate impact for these success metrics on these groups of students here. So we focused on gender, ethnicity, DSPS, foster, and veteran students. And then I listed out all of the success metrics. So not just attempted, it's also attempted and earned for all of the units. And then the rest of the success metrics are here as well. And this was recently updated to model the equity analysis dashboard that the Chancellor's Office created in the Student Success Metrics dashboard. So this follows the same format where DI present, it's a little dot no, and then we have a circle where DI is present. So that was the update to this visualization. And then So the filters, let me see. The filters are based, so once we choose the gender, the filters are based on the student group that we select. So if it's, say for ethnicity, it does get kind of busy. So we can filter on African Americans and Hispanic students, and then that makes it a little bit easier to see which groups are experiencing disproportionate impact. And see, most recently, African Americans are experiencing disproportionate impact in that success metric. So you can track it over time by success metric, focus on your groups of interest. And then for the Hispanic and African American students, we made tabs for them. So you can just go through the success metrics and click the gender, but it's already grouped to compare Hispanics to non-Hispanics. And then same with the African American tab, it's African Americans compared to non-African American students. And then, so back to the presentation. So the use for this dashboard currently, it's to help programs track their students, look at their success outcomes, how students are performing within that department. So athletes or students with a specific major or a specific learning and career pathway. And then for future implementations, we want to implement the completion of 9 core pathway units in the first year. And that was a project that was started during the summer, where we hired a student worker to help us create that database using eLumen data. So that's something that we want to, that's some data we want to utilize to include that that success metric into our dashboard. And then we're also very close to including transfer information using the National Student Clearinghouse data. And I would love any feedback. I know I got a lot from Lindsay's presentation, but if anybody has any feedback on things that they noticed or after playing around with the dashboard, any tips that they have on how to make this dashboard more user-friendly, that would be very much appreciated.
Patsy, I had a question actually. This is all on Tableau Public, but I when you were showing the different Asian categories, it looked like you weren't masking any small N sizes. We're having conversations on our campus about that, and I wondered if there was, and what was the discussion around limiting access to small group information? So like less than 10,
Yeah,
less than
I
5,
see.
that sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out actually, because I thought it did mask it. So I will have to go back to evaluate this.
Sorry, but
Yeah.
is it a general policy at your institution to limit it?
I'm not sure actually. I will have to get back to you on that.
No worries.
There we go. Hey, Patsy, I put something in the chat about usually I create one tab to like, okay, so what you're talking about, the golden 4 and having to like just explain that to folks. I find that when I try to like explain on the page, it gets too wordy because people want to come in and edit and they want it to be like include all kinds of stuff. So I just create a whole nother tab that's like all the other special information goes here. Explaining about suppressed cell sizes, because in ours, you can either choose between having a text version that says less than 5 or just no number showing up. So explain about that. This is how we're defining success and retention. This is how we're defining the golden 4. This is, that. And then like I always have a little section that's like, coming next year, we're going to include these programs or these filters or whatever else. So that's how I get around that. I used to work for somebody who was very, very wordy, and the dashboard would be like mostly text. And I'm like, no, it makes me want to run away. So that was my workaround for that.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
Okay, so yeah, if there are any other questions, I don't know if you want to put your email in the chat, Patsy, and people can reach out to you. And then the link to the dashboard is in the chat. It was posted earlier, I believe. Okay, but yeah, thank you so much, Patsy, for presenting and showcasing that dashboard. That was very helpful, and there were a lot of metrics that I'm probably going to steal from you all. All right, so I don't know if you want to share your screen, so I'm going to pass it over to Lisa, who is going to be demonstrating something. So for office hours today, we got a request for a demonstration. And so Lisa is going to show how to use a pop-out filter and also a collapsible filter, it looks like. So yeah, take it away, Lisa. Thank you.
Yeah, so like Sam said, we got a request from Tracy Flores to demonstrate how to create a filter menu that you could show and hide at the click of a button, so like a collapsible menu. And those can be really useful because a lot of times we have end users who want all of the filters on the dashboard, and filters take up a lot of space. And so a lot of times real estate on your dashboard can be quite precious. You don't want to have to compromise the layout or design of your dashboard to incorporate, these 25 filters that people want to see. And so having something that they can still have those filters accessible, but not shown all the time can be a good compromise to include all of those things. So I put a link in the chat to this dashboard that I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you kind of the end product, and then we'll go into Tableau and I'll demonstrate how it's created. So there are two essential ways to create a filter menu that you can show and hide at the click of a button. They both use containers. One uses a floating container, where you would float a container on your dashboard, you would put your filters inside, and then you would add a show hide button like this filter icon up here. So when the user clicks it, oh, I've had this open too long. Let me reload it. It's been sitting idly on my computer. So when a user clicks it, your filter menu opens up. They have access to those filters. They can apply whatever they want. And then when they're done, they can close it. The pro to doing this with a floating container is it's fairly straightforward. It's like I just mentioned, you add a floating container, you put whatever you want in it, and then you add a show hide button and you're done. The con to that is that it's a floating container. So it's going to float on top of things on your dashboard. And in this case, the menu is pretty small. I made it not too large, but as you imagine, as you get more and more filters, your menu gets bigger and bigger, and it starts obscuring more and more things on your dashboard. In this case, it's only hiding part of this title, but you might get into a situation where it's hiding your charts. And so then your users are applying filters, but they're not able to see the chart behind it because the filter menu is there. So it's not as clean and sophisticated as it could be. Now, initially, when Tableau introduced this kind of show hide feature, they only did it with collapsible or floating containers. And so that was your only option. But now you can show and hide literally any object on your dashboard. And when they introduced tile containers, you could do this in a much sleeker way with your filter menu. So in this case, using a tiled container, when we click this filter icon, the filters will actually pop out to the side and shift your charts over. And then, you can apply whatever you want. And then when you're done, you close it, exit out, and it shifts back and it's hidden again. So I tend to do it this way. I think it looks a lot cleaner and sophisticated. It keeps things so you can see everything at all times. So that's kind of the pro. The con is it's a little bit harder to implement. You do have to have a good grasp on containers, and containers can be a bit fiddly to work with. So I'll jump into Tableau and we'll look at both of the ways to do this. First, we'll do it with a floating container, which I mentioned was the kind of straightforward way. And if you're not familiar with containers, they come in two flavors. We have a horizontal container down here on the left-hand side. That just means that Tableau is going to tile the things in that container horizontally, so in a row. Or we have a vertical container, which means Tableau will tile the things in it vertically in a column. And you can't put things vertically inside a horizontal column or horizontally inside a vertical column. So that's kind of a drawback to that. And that's going to come into play later, which is why I'm mentioning it. So we'll just bring out a horizontal column. So I'm going to make that first floating one that was kind of across the top of the dashboard. And when I pull it out, Tableau is trying to tile it because my dashboard's in tiled. If I hit shift, it will just temporarily allow me to float this container. So I'm just holding shift and then I drop it. And then we just got to start filling it up. So I'm going to go to one of my charts and add the filters. We'll add our year. Oh, where did it go? There, it just took a minute. We'll add our region, our category, and subcategory. And so now we have this container, and the first thing you probably notice is you can see all the stuff behind it. And that's because containers by default are transparent. So we just need to give it a little bit of color so you can't see what's floating behind it or what it's floating on top of. And to quickly just grab a whole container, right now I have one of the filters selected inside that container. So it's just outlined in gray and it has this gray tab at the top. And if I double click on that gray tab, it'll select the whole container. So let's go over to our layout pane on the left-hand side, and we'll just give it a background color of white so you can't see all that text. And I'll put a little border around it as well. So now we have the floating container. I made all of these multi-value dropdowns, but I'm just going to make it big to illustrate the issue with floating, and we'll just leave it like this. So we've got this container. If you want to make it, add that show hide button, you go to the little caret on the container and click add show hide button. And then Tableau will add this little icon that's an X. And when you click it, it will close that container and now it's gone. And Tableau defaults to this little kind of hamburger icon when it's closed and the X when it's open. This button is editable. So if you go into the little caret on the button, you can edit it and put in pretty much any icon that you want. I would just be, I would caution you to use the same icon across your college. When we started doing this, we weren't very consistent in our department, and I think it caused some confusion for our users. We were putting it in different places, we were using different icons, and users weren't able to kind of get used to the look and feel of it. And so I would just advise you to, right off the bat, use the same icons if you can. So if the item is hidden, if the item is shown, I usually just leave the X because the X is very intuitive. When it's hidden, we tend to use this little filter icon that you saw on the final dashboard. And so you can just click whatever icon you want. And then I usually like to edit the tooltip as well. So down here, you can see there's a tooltip for it. And I'm just going to put show filters so the user knows what to do when they hover over it. And when it's shown, I'm going to do hide filters so they know that that X is going to close it. And click OK. And then you have your show hide collapsible, floating collapsible filter menu. And again, I made it obnoxiously large so that you could see the issue with the floating, right? If I were to change my region, you can't see what's going on that map, right? Because this is floating on top of it. So the way to get around that is by using the tiled approach. So here, I've just created the filter menu already just for time. And when I originally started trying to do this, I thought, well, okay, I'm just going to drag this on and I'm going to tile it on my dashboard. I'll add that show hide button and voila, it will collapse as I anticipate. No, it won't. It didn't work as designed and I was very frustrated and I didn't know why. And it's because when you have these tiled containers, if you want them to collapse fully and shift all of your items and your charts, they have to be in a container with all the things you want to shift, which took me forever to realize. So this is where things get a little bit fiddly, right? Because we have to start using containers. And I'm going to actually jump into PowerPoint to show you kind of conceptually where we're going, just to kind of keep that in mind as we build it out. So this is just a recreation of that layout that we have, the 2x2 grid with the 4 charts, and we have the filter menu to the right. And the goal is to put this filter menu in one container with all 4 charts. And to do that, we need 4 containers. We need a horizontal container for our top 2 charts. We need a horizontal container for our bottom 2 charts. And then because we can't put horizontal containers vertically in a horizontal container, you need a vertical container to put those 2. And then you need one container to contain them all so that you can pop in and out that filter, which is this orange outlined one. So that's where we're going. So let's start building that out in Tableau. First, let me get a temperature check. Does this, are people following this so far? Because I know containers are kind of discombobulating. Yeah, okay. Stop me, anyone, come off mute and just yell at me if you need me to stop. So, okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to contain, we should have done a game where we did, how many times did I say container? We need to contain these top two charts. So we'll add a horizontal container to the dashboard. And I'm going to put a big fat outline around it so we can all see it as and keep track of it. And we're going to put those two top charts in there. And then I'm just going to distribute the contents evenly. I like to do that when I have to keep a nice grid. And so we've got the first two in a container. We need to now do the same to the bottom two charts. So I'll bring out another horizontal container. And again, I'm going to put a big old border around it so you can see it. And I'm going to put those two bottom charts in there. And again, I'm just going to distribute them evenly. So we've got the two horizontal containers. Now we need to put them both inside of a vertical container. So they'll go on top of each other like they are right now. So we're going to throw this out. And again, I'll give it a big border. And when you're starting to put containers into containers, it's really easy to lose track of them. So I usually like to put a blank into the container to kind of keep it expanded. And I'm going to add some color to that blank. So again, so you can see it. If you don't do this, it's really difficult to get your containers placed inside there because they're going to go into other containers and they're not going to get in there at all. Sometimes I get lucky and they fall in there and I can't even figure it out. So I always put a blank in my containers when I'm doing things like this to help keep it expanded so you don't lose track of it. So I'm going to bring that orange container in and I'm going to bring that green container in and I'm going to get rid of my blank now. And again, we'll just distribute everything evenly so we have a beautiful 2x2 grid. And we just need one more container, one more to put that filter menu in so it'll pop in and out. So we're going to grab a horizontal container because that filter menu is going to be to the side of it. And again, I'm going to put a big old border around it. And I'm going to put a blank in it so that we keep track of it. And we'll put some color on there again. Let's grab that filter menu. We'll put this into that container. And then we'll grab this big black outlined container and we'll put that in there too. We'll get rid of the blank. And now I'm going to leave the outlines on for right now so you can see it. We've got the filter menu inside of a container with all of the things we want to shift as it opens and closes. So now when you click it, everything will move and expand as we anticipate. So now we can take out all these outlines because we don't need them anymore. We were just doing that to keep track of everything. Oops. See, I'm already losing track of my containers. Let's get rid of them. Oh, and I think I forgot. I added, like Lindsay said, I like to add padding to a lot of stuff. And this one, you can see I've got all this extra white space down here. And I can't remember exactly what I did, but I think it was 350 maybe. 350. Yeah. And so now we've got this menu that kind of just looks nice on the side when you need it, and then you can get rid of it when you don't. So like I said, you've gotta really understand containers to get this to work properly. But like I always like to add outlines. I always like to add blanks, and that will help keep things kind of mapped out for you so you can kind of solve this container puzzle, if you will. Are there questions? I'm sure this was clear as mud with all of the containers being contained. So is there any questions?
Lisa, one thing that I find helpful is renaming my containers using the item hierarchy in the lower corner.
Good. good point. So as Kim pointed out, you can name all of these containers. Like if you don't name them, it's just called vertical, horizontal, horizontal, vertical. But if I were to click on this caret and go down to rename dashboard item, I could call this, you know, all charts, right? Because it's the one with all 4 charts. And I could name this one top charts, right? And this one bottom charts. So you get the idea. And I think I did this in the final dashboard on my my profile that I shared with you all. I just didn't do it here. I just neglected to do it. So yeah, you if you name things, it's much easier to keep track of. That's a great point, Kim. Okay, any other questions? Anything else? No. Okay, well, so this was our office hours this week. You know, we kind of, when we were coming up with the idea for office hours, we didn't know what it was going to be. We wanted it to be something that would be helpful to you. So if you all want to see other stuff like this, like demos of features in Tableau, or you want to talk through an issue you're having with it, with a specific dashboard or calculated field or anything, if you want help like this, just let us know. I'm going to put the link to our sign up sheet in the chat. You're welcome to sign up on that document, or you're welcome to email any one of us and just let us know what you will find helpful. And yep, so that's a link I just put in. And then that's it for today's meeting. Our next meeting, as Kim mentioned up top, is going to be on Valentine's Day, where there will be lots of love in the air. One of the things that you all said you wanted from that feedback survey we did was things about level of detail expressions, or LODs. So we are bringing in Danny Steinmetz. He is at Interworks, and he's going to give a presentation about demystifying LODs. And then our showcase is going to be a little bit different than what we've been doing. Kim and I are going to go under the hood of our DI calculations workbook, because it's chocked full of LODs. And we're going to walk through those steps to show you kind of how we've used LODs to create the percentage point gap analysis at MiraCosta. And then office hours are open. So if anyone has anything that they want to see or learn more about, please let us know. If you ever want to present or share anything, always let us know. We'd love to have you. And I think that's it. You can always email any of the 3 of us, or the CCC TUG email. And we're really excited that you were here. We hope you have a safe and happy holiday season, and we'll see you all in the new year.
Thank you so much for this excellent resource.